Hello?
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 Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Oh, hello, Barney.
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Bonjour.
Hi.
How you doing there? Yellow? Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
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 Yo.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello there, guys. Mark Mandel here. Welcome to episode number 9 of Customer Experience Tales from the Trenches. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. Before we get into the show itself, I thought I would just point out that I'm sitting here on my back deck of the house today, showing you this show live from my backyard, if only because here in North Carolina, spring has sprung and it's going to be 75 and sunny today. Not to make you too jealous, but it's going to be a perfect day. And I thought it would be a crime to be stuck inside, so I'm outside, and I hope that's okay with you. I want to take a moment to introduce, for those of you who don't know me or don't know the show Tales from the Trenches, I wanted to take a moment to just frame this show for you and why I do what I do. So I'm a longtime customer experience guy, mostly on the vendor side, close to 30 years, who chose to walk away from having a conventional job about a year ago and instead go out on my own with different friends and clients and projects and things like that. And I've been loving my life. And one of those projects is bringing shows like this together for you. And I'm thrilled to share it with you and all my friends out there. So thanks for coming on this journey with me. Today is a very special episode of Tales from the Trenches. I have the opportunity each month when I do this show live to talk with some of my closest friends in the business, people that I really admire and respect, and today's no exception. I'm going to have 2 very special guys coming on the show in the next few minutes to join me for a conversation. We'll come back to that in just a couple of minutes. But first, I want to talk about a little bit of other things while we're together, a little bit of housekeeping stuff, and then we'll kind of take it from there. One of the things I like talking about on this show is what I call my wow moments, or things that really came along in the last month or so that really kind of surprised me, sometimes in the negative, sometimes in the positive. I'm going to talk about something that was surprising, a little both positive and negative. I don't know if you remember from the last episode, or those of you that were listening in, I had mentioned that last month was kind of the highlight of the conference season for customer experience folks like all of us. And I went to both the Qualtrics conference out in Utah and the Medallia conference out in Las Vegas in 2 back-to-back weeks. And those conferences could not be more different from each other. But, for me, one of the most interesting takeaways from both of those events, when you kind of line them up back to back, were those 2 companies are on increasingly divergent paths. Whereas the leadership team from Qualtrics, who got up and spent a lot of stage time a few weeks ago talking about their forward-looking strategy, their strategy has always been and continues to be bolstering the survey as the core mechanism to get data back into the analytics workflows and so forth. And all their innovation was all about making a better survey. Whereas if you went to the Medallia conference, a lot of the conversation there was, what do we do in a post-survey world? What do we do when surveys are no longer going to be viable as a way to engage an audience and get feedback back? And they were talking about more increasing reliance on AI as a way to be able to replace the survey, at least eventually. Their leadership team was all new at Medallia, so they were using the conference as a way to introduce themselves. And for those of you old timers in this space, the Medallia leadership team, the new guys, are all the old Clarabridge guys who at some point, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, sold the old Clarabridge company to Qualtrics, went to Qualtrics and went and led that company. And then over the last month or 6 weeks, all kind of en masse got up from Qualtrics and moved over to Medallia, where they're all running the company over there now. And it was really an interesting juxtaposition from what I've seen in the past. They were also taking a little bit of at Medallia of a we're going to try to fix this attitude, because they know that parts of the market's relationship with their company is a little bit broken. So there was a bit of a mea culpa attitude up on stage as well. But more generally than not, it was just really focused on, what do we do when surveys stop allowing us to get meaningful engagement? And that was certainly eye-opening to me, because that's the first time I've heard either Qualtrics or Medallia begin to think about addressing that question. Now, one of the things I like doing on this show as we work through some of this kind of opening material together before we get into the conversation is I like recognizing people in the industry who are doing interesting and good work. I used to give out awards to people for doing that, but here I just want, it's not so much an award. I want to just talk about a couple of guys who I know in the business and just introduce you to them. If you could see on my screen here, I want to talk for a moment about Bill Stakos and Justin LaHoulier. Bill works at Bank of New York Mellon, and Justin is over at Delta Dental, the Delta plan in New Jersey and up in Connecticut. Bill is one of the heads of their CX strategy organization, and Justin is their chief information officer at Delta. And the reason I want to recognize Bill and Justin for their hard work is not just what they do in the office day in and day out, which is really key to why they're here, but more important, I want to recognize them for their, what I'm going to call their generosity. Both of these guys have spent innumerable number of hours and innumerable amounts of effort in public forums like LinkedIn, posting really amazing content day in and day out. These guys are out there sharing their best ideas, their best, cheat codes, their best thinking with the entire LinkedIn following. And, when you see some guys, whether they be in technology guys like Justin or strategy guys like Bill, when they're, a lot of guys who see that type of information, they want to hoard it because for them, hoarding information is power. And they want to accumulate that like it's points on a board somehow. And these guys are whatever the opposite is. These guys are out there saying, you know what, goodness and sharing. I want to get out there every day and invest an hour or two in the mornings, even over my cup of coffee, putting that next LinkedIn post together, putting out that next article, putting out that next video. In fact, for the last couple of years before he was at Bank of New York, Bill had a podcast himself called Be Customer Led. And I'll tell you, in many ways, that podcast was the inspiration for this podcast. And so I want to give Bill and Justin my most wholehearted, positive shout out as my way of acknowledging their contribution in their content delivery and how they choose to be generous with their time and their willingness to share it. So Bill and Justin, thank you guys. You guys are terrific. Another guy I want to talk for a minute about is Tom DeWitt. I don't know if you know Tom at all, but he's currently running an initiative called the XM Global Collaborative. But you may also know Tom from his past work at Michigan State University, where he put together a lot of the CX leadership forums and programs at the school. He's left that program behind, and now he's spearheading this XM Global initiative, where it might become this kind of whole coalition of CX folks who work together collaboratively to be able to deliver best practices or thought leadership or even services to one another. And it's becoming a larger and larger scale initiative. The reason I bring up Tom here is because the other day he reached out to me on LinkedIn and told me that he's doing a conference, a virtual conference on May 14th. And make that note, May 14th, the XM Global Collaborative has a virtual CX conference where they're going to have 25 or 30 high caliber speakers be available to us throughout the course of the day, talking a lot about customer experience topics. And I know they charge a handsome fee to get into that event as an attendee, even virtually through like a Zoom call equivalent. But Tom called me up and then reached out on LinkedIn and said, hey, I have 5 passes for you if you want. Give them out to folks who are here on your podcast if they want them. So I'm here to offer you guys, if you want a pass for the May 14th XM Global Collaborative Virtual Conference. And boy, that's a bit of a mouthful. Ping me here, shoot me a note, get in touch on LinkedIn, whatever it might be, but I only got 5 of them. But if you want one of those 5, and I hope you'll take me up on it, it's totally free. Let me know, and I'll get your name on one of them, and we'll make sure you could go join Tom's program on the 14th of May. It's going to be a good one. I know I'm going to be listening in myself. I want to talk for just a few minutes together while we're here before I bring on my first of our 2 guests. I want to talk about one of those guys. His name is Ibby Syed. And you've heard me talk about Ibby on this show in earlier episodes. Ibby is a gentleman who's a co-founder of a company called Cotera. I have the opportunity to partner with Cotera and do some advisory work for him and his team. So they're a very special group of guys to me, but I want to give you some context. I had the opportunity first to get connected with Ibby almost a year ago now, maybe just a tad less than a year ago, when he and one of my other business partners, his name is Mark Zides from a company called Luminoso, got in touch with me and Mark said to me, hey, I met this guy, Ibby. You should go talk to him. He's doing some interesting work, and go get to know him better and see if there's a way that maybe you guys could be good for one another. And I reached out to Ibby and we spoke back then. We met up at a conference in Texas, and then we started really talking more recently since then about ways that we might be able to work together. And let me tell you, my friends, Ibby and his company Cotera are doing amazing work. If you don't know Ibby or Cotera, you will by the end of this show. But that said, to give you some framing, Ibby is a guy who sees a really strong there at the intersection of agentic AI, which seems to be the term we're all talking about right now, and customer experience. And so that's what we're going to talk about when we get together here on this show in just a second with Ibby and our other special guest, who I'll introduce in a couple of minutes. We're going to talk about what role does agentic AI play, what role does AI in general play, agentic or otherwise, in CX, where are the real business opportunities, where are the threats and challenges, and we'll talk about some new thinking, new ideas in that space. What I'd like to do is ask Ibby to pop in here with me, and we'll get a chance to get you guys connected to one another. Then we'll bring on our other guest, Bret, and the three of us will have a good conversation. So let's bring Ibby out here. Hey, there's Ibby.
Hey, Mark. Hey, how's it going? Thanks. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited. I'm excited about this, and thank you for such a nice introduction.
You know, you've always been one of the good guys in this space, and so I'm excited to share our relationship that you and I share with our friends listening in here. So thank you for hanging out with us.
Yeah, of course.
You know,
I'm also really jealous of your background.
You know, if I just kind of pivot my camera for a second, this is my backyard. You know, I'm sitting out here at 70 something degrees. It's sunny. I got my t-shirt on, sitting on my back deck. How bad could that be today?
I'm very jealous. Nothing has made me sadder than being in an office in New York City right now than staring at all the lush greenery behind you. So that's
but we got extra room here at the house if you guys want to come down and crash here anytime. You know,
new HQ.
Hey, why not? I only charge a small amount of rent. You know, Ibby, you and I have known one another now for a bit of time, but it dawns on me that people listening in may not know kind of the Cotera story or even the Ibby story. Can you take just a couple of minutes and share with the listeners here kind of where, you know, your backstory a little bit, kind of some of the fascinating work you've done, and kind of a little bit of the founding launch story of Cotera and kind of where it came from?
Sure. Yeah. Let me give that a go. I'll try to keep it quick so as to not bore people. So my last job was I was early hire at Peloton. I was their first data scientist, and my job was entirely helping business stakeholders action on data from machine learning algorithms. So like a couple great use cases, right? Product team. Hey, we're getting new customers through the door every single day. What features are they asking us to build? Retention team. Hey, which customers are most likely to churn, and how do I get the data in real time so I can action on it and send them the right campaign in the right moment? Legal team. Hey, like which customers are complaining, which customers might have had an issue with the product, that kind of stuff. And what my team did was we built systems to help people better utilize data and take action on it. And that's what we do at Cotera. So we work with companies of all sizes to the way that the system works is we sit on top of your existing data layer. So whether that be an internal data warehouse or data that's coming in from a SaaS tool like Zendesk, we install an agentic layer on top of it that's designed to help you take a very, very specific action. And then we export the data to whatever system you live in. And that sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, right? Like I've said agentic, I've said SaaS, I've said data warehouse, I've said all the buzzwords that you hear these days. And put very simply, I'll just tell you some stories of how our customers use the product, right? We've got companies like Built that have us sit on top of all of their customer support tickets, and they automate voice of the customer, right? Rather than having somebody go through and manually tag every single ticket, just have an AI agent that knows your business really well say, hey, this ticket is about paying rent versus this ticket, which is about paying at a POS system. And then you look at other companies like Cotera who are using us to help with automating quality assurance, right? So rather than having their director of customer experience spend 4 or 5 hours a day manually reading through every single negative CSAT interaction that an agent had with a customer, have an AI do the rubric part, and then give the information to the manager so that they can actually spend their valuable time developing a training plan. And so we have dozens upon dozens of use cases across companies. We're kind of like a hybrid between a software company and a team that'll help you set up your own AI agents. But the whole core value prop behind the business is helping make sure that you can unlock valuable human time. Our time is precious. We should not be spending it. We should not be using it doing things we don't want to do, doing things that don't provide leverage. So why not hand off all the boring stuff to an AI agent so you can focus on the strategic work that your business.
It's super interesting. I want to figure out with your help here, Ibby, where that line is drawn, because I see so many companies who are tempted to see the latest builds in these AI capabilities as a way to simply knock employment out of the picture, right? To be able to say, we don't need a room full of call center agents anymore if we could unleash AI, right? And, for me, that's a danger zone. And instead, I'd like to think, unless you tell me I'm wrong, AI as a way to kind of amplify human output, right? It's a way to augment me. It's a way to make me better at my job, more proficient, more fast at my job, and not knock me out.
I've got a great one. I've got one that I use actually every single day now. One of the things I hate and I find really upsetting. Well, upsetting is too much of a word there, but I'm sure everyone on this goes on LinkedIn or goes on Twitter from time to time and sees how many messages are just explicitly an AI bot that is interacting with a post to make it so the author notices them, right? Like somebody will write a post about something and then a chat GPT style message with a bunch of M dashes comes in saying, wow, what an insightful post. I love how and then all it does is summarize the post. And it's like, dude, this is so clearly written by AI. What are you doing? What we do at Cotera is instead of having the AI do the writing for us, we actually have a bot that sits on top of all of our Twitter and LinkedIn feeds, right? So my feed, Twitter, the Twitter feed, the LinkedIn feed, and rather than making it so I have to spend tons of time scrolling through prospects and my business relationships posts, it will do all of the reading for me, and it'll message me saying, hey, here's a post about AI. Here's a post about starting a business. Here's a post about CX. You should go now and comment on it because you have something valuable to add. Rather than replacing the human part, replace the boring part of scrolling and doom scrolling and give time back to the human to actually provide context and valuable conversations. That's a very, very easy use case, and one where if you just twist the thinking a little bit, you can actually get a ton of leverage on your time.
And I think that's, to me, Ibby, that's the key word, is get leverage, right? It's about making me as a person not burn my time on the commoditized part of my job, but to focus more on the higher value output part of the job.
100%. 100%. Like you brought up CX. I think that the right place for these AI agents is kind of like a hybrid component, right? There's so many customers. If you think of a conventional retail platform, there's so many conversations that are happening like, hey, where's my order? Or does this product contain gluten? Or I don't know, something where if you just have a better self-serve option, it's kind of like the self-serve doesn't quite touch it, but you don't need, a 20-minute conversation with a person. Chatbots are great at that kind of stuff. And the thing that they do is they unlock more time for your human employees to spend times with the customers that do have those deeper, more pressing problems. And you're not trying to just get through those tickets as fast as possible, because the AIs can do the sort of low-hanging fruit. You can actually spend longer with each individual customer and have the same outcomes come from it.
And maybe better.
Oh, so much better.
Because, for me, it's funny. I when I was talking about creating the thumbnail and the kind of the promotion for this podcast episode, I fell back on the old cliche, but I kind of reversed the order of, is AI truly better, cheaper, and faster? Because in some ways, depending on the use cases, I could easily see it being cheaper. I could easily see it being faster. The question is it better? And from that perspective, there seems to always have been a trade-off up until recently of one of those three has to go. Is it going to be better but not cheaper or faster? Is it going to be cheaper but not faster or better? Right? Where's the trade? And it feels like we're inching our way to all three, at some point very soon, but without fear of compromise, without fear of trade. But right now, it does an amazing job from what I'm seeing, and you guys especially so, in helping to empower people versus helping to replace people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, right? And I think it depends on the specific context too, where if you're a hospital, you utilizing AI as a customer focus point is going to require quite a lot more training and quite a lot more care than, I don't know, a brand that sells, widgets down the road, right? Both are important. Both have places for AI and no place for AI, but the specific instances are going to be quite a lot different, I think.
Totally. I could see that. That makes sense. Ibby, we should bring our special guest, Bret Miller, into the conversation. Let's bring Bret onto the stage.
Yeah.
I feel reticent in leaving Bret hanging backstage too long. I think, he's an important part of this chat. So let's bring him out here. Hey, Bret.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for bringing me on.
Bret, I can't ignore your hipster glasses, how cool they look on you, and how I could only try to come close with my own, but I
know. They're almost identical. Ibby, you missed this pre-show. Mark and I were talking. We're like, well, Bret, you don't have Ibby's hair. That's a given. But at least Mark and I share the same glasses. So I'm cool in that aspect.
Guys, I have the same pair of glasses.
Dare we all wear them at once? Who knows?
Yeah,
I don't know where they are, but that's wow. You guys are really the acetate clear glasses. You really got that on lock.
In my case, I'm an old enough guy where I actually need the glasses, where I'm kind of flying blind here right about now. So you got to bear with me a little bit, because I can no longer see you.
Mark, you should wear your glasses if they make you see.
And now I got fingerprints all over them, so it's even harder to see. Bret, thanks for hanging out with Ibby and me. Can I ask you, just to let the listeners know a little bit of kind of the Bret Miller story, kind of what you're up to, kind of your lane in the kind of the world of kind of CX and insight research, kind of the work that you like to do, what's important to you, just so we all know a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, you bet. I'll try to give you the short version. So most of my career has been spent in sort of the trifecta of research: market research, consumer research, and then product experience research. So that's predominantly what I've been doing most of my career. Well, let me give you a little bit of insight into industries. So I've spent time in education. I've spent time in healthcare. Most recently, I was in sports equipment manufacturing, specifically golf equipment manufacturing. That was a lot of fun. I've spent a lot of time in nutritional supplement research and now pharmaceuticals. But what I try to do is, and you guys hit on this earlier, I think within the CX space, we as an industry, we do a really, really good job at throwing fuel on the fire. How can we increase the customer experience? How can we increase some sort of product experience? I think we do a great job at that. I think where we're lacking and where AI helps us increase the capacity is on the research side and really understanding before we just throw fuel on the fire, let's understand what's impacting the fire, what's impacting the customer experience, what's impacting either some sort of satisfaction or dissatisfaction with an experience. And so I try to be that, I like to call it a CX synthesizer, where we're combining the fuel with research. And I try to help companies do that so that we're not just only research or only trying to just throw fuel on the fire. It's sort of a nice tag team of research and synthesizing into action. So that's what I do.
That's important stuff. You know, I'd love to start off the part of the conversation with the three of us here by asking kind of a big question and then see where it takes us. And the question I want to ask both of you to kind of think about and chew on with me a little bit here. A couple of things I want to share in the form of this question. First, I see a lot of companies that I work with day in and day out that are trying to figure out, where do we start with AI and what role does AI play for them in their world of customer experience work or even research work. And some people think it has to be a fully fleshed out race to the finish line to say, boy, we're going to be fully proficient in AI in the next X amount of time. But I think that's misguided. And what I want to ask you guys about, I've been starting to use a term I want you to react to. Kind of, is it a race to the starting line? How do you get started? Where are those first baby steps? And let me be really specific. The gentleman who I gave some shout out to a little while ago, Justin from Delta Dental, wrote a posting on LinkedIn maybe a month or so ago where he had seen some third-party research where they talked about some of these AI initiatives in companies failing, and a significant failure rate he talked about. And the reason he speculated that they failed was they didn't set out to prove anything or do anything other than, quote, try AI, right? And so there's no definition to it, no business outcome that he could attach to say, boy, if we could do X better than we do today, that's a win. And instead, he said, let's go try AI and let's get proficient in AI because somebody up above in the leadership team said, we got to be in AI. What are you guys seeing in your own worlds? Are you guys seeing companies that are trying to artificially get to the finish line, or just getting started with experiments and pilots and wrapping business outcomes to it? What are you seeing in your day-to-day?
You want me to go first, Ibby?
Go for it.
I'll go first. I love that question, Mark. And let me give you maybe a parallel that I think might be helpful. I mentioned that one of my recent roles was leading the global research efforts for a golf manufacturing company. Tons of fun. It was absolutely fantastic. Also, last week was the Masters, so I think a golf analogy or golf parallel is suitable.
Sure.
So if we just for maybe a minute, the history of golf is interesting, and I think it parallels with what's happening with AI right now, particularly in the CX space. So up until even through the 1970s, golf manufacturers and players were using wood-based golf clubs, like literally wood from a tree. So that was the technology, archaic medieval technology, even through the 1970s. Well, at that point is when manufacturers were starting to release to the masses. Professional players were starting to use what we call metal technology. So they were infusing it, instead of predominantly being wood technology, it was metal technology. And what the fear at the time is the results were drastic. A wood versus a metal golf club, people were hitting it miles farther, not literally, but significantly farther than a wood-based golf club. Let me sort of give you just a brief scenario. So with a wood-based golf club, the head of the golf club, the sweet spot, you had to hit it just perfectly. And if you didn't, you were severely punished. So the ball would hardly go anywhere. Trajectory in terms of dispersion, left or right, could just be wildly left, wildly right. Well, with the technology of metal, what that allowed golfers to do is they could hit the ball less than perfect. They couldn't hit it terrible, but it just didn't have to be an absolute perfect strike. And what would happen is the distance loss was marginal. The ball still went really, really far. The error, so the dispersion left or right, was actually shrunk. It brought in. And so you didn't have to be quite as perfect as often and still get a tremendous result. So you can kind of see where I'm going. What color analysts were saying at the time is they were saying, this is going to ruin golf. This technology cannot be allowed, because what it does is it washes out the elite golfers. An average professional could probably perform just as good as an elite golfer. It's going to destroy golf. So skipping ahead several years, and now we have decades of data, what ended up happening is, yes, it raised the base performance. Everybody was hitting it farther. Everybody was hitting it more accurately. That's true. That's what AI is doing right now with everybody. It's allowing the error to be shrunk. It's allowing people to have higher capacity and doing things more than they were able to do before. But what we didn't, at least in the golf world, what they didn't anticipate is those elite players, those elite golfers that they were worried about was going to ruin. It actually gave them an even higher advantage. They versus the average of a professional player, those elite players were hitting it even farther. Their error was even tighter. And so it actually created even more separation from the average professional golfer. I think, in my opinion, I think that's exactly what AI and agentic AI is doing, specifically in the CX space. Is, yes, it's going to raise the capacity of everybody, but those really elite players in the space are going to be able to take advantage that others just don't have the capability of doing.
Ibby, what do you think?
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. Could not agree more. And there's so many parallels in the business world. Like one thing that we can talk about that might be kind of fun is the fact that there's all of this worry, and I completely understand where it comes from, that AI is going to have people lose jobs. And I think what's going to happen is what's happened throughout history is that jobs are fundamentally going to change. When the ATM was invented in the, I think, early 1900s, mid 1900s, everyone was up in arms about the fact that cash, bankers were all going to lose their jobs. But when you kind of think about it, when you go to a bank and interact with a human, it's for higher level orders of operations, right? You're not always going to go get cash out of a drawer. Humans are worth more than that, frankly. The human brain is capable of so much more than reaching into a drawer and handing you some cash. The invention of the spreadsheet, for example, companies like Ernst & Young used to hire thousands upon thousands of people to just literally go down a row of data and multiply it by some number to be able to calculate taxes. And people still have that job. They just don't have to do as much of the manual labor of it, right? Because we have spreadsheets. AI is going to do the same thing for us, which is that all of the nitty-gritty sort of non-strategic work you have to do is going to become probably a little bit more abstracted away. If you're a marketer today, you can spend a lot less time worrying about the finer details of an artistic piece of advertising than you can of understanding how to talk to your customers. What is the core value we provide? What should we test, right? Rather than spending 3 months trying to get creative to get back to you with something. Creative can now spin up a version of a specific campaign that's for every person in your ICP, right? Rather than having to come up with 5 different versions of copy, you can come up with one in every single language across a million different personas in the time it would have taken. I don't know, you would get a coffee. It's just going to, the people that are at a higher level right now, the people that are a little bit more strategic, the people that can do more with less, are going to be the ones, like Bret said, that are going to be rewarded in this environment. And everyone else is probably going to, society always adapts, and it will adapt to this as well.
I think what both of you are talking about, whether Bret in your golf example or Ibby even in your banking one, I used the term before, amplification. I see this as a way to enable people to have their capabilities and their time amplified more capably or more wide-reaching in the high-value payoff areas. And to be able to do that in a way that makes sense without necessarily burning a lot of commodity time to not have to waste that. Ibby, can I put you on the spot for a minute? Since you're here in part talking about a company that you represent that's clearly in the technology part of this business. the question comes up all the time. Why do I need software like Ibby's? I can go get Chat GPT, throw some data in Chat GPT and get some answers. Isn't that pretty magical? Clearly I see that as a glaring danger zone for these people, but they don't necessarily understand that coming in. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about these companies that are either just using vanilla Chat GPT or even other software providers who are just taking a foundational model, like let's say an OpenAI model, and putting an API wrapper around it and calling it a product. Right?
Yeah, and Bret, I'm curious to see what you think about this. I think that, look, it's reminiscent of the early 2000s, right? Like .com 1.0, we were seeing basically companies that are like websites that were filing for IPOs, right? Like you think of all of the companies that had exits in 2000, 2001, 2002, the late 90s. And what they were internet companies, right? This was the magical future technology of the internet. And effectively, like, the bare bones of it was, let's take some text, let's put it on a screen, and let's let everyone access it. And that was something that we could do before, and that had a lot of value. I think that is the stage where we are at with AI, right? Like people are, what is the first thing what is the first thing we can do? What is the low hanging fruit? And that's what it is, right? Like take what's that company called? It's like the Grammarly. It's like Jasper AI or something, right? Like Jasper AI is, competes with Grammarly, and at least the first version of their product was literally just like a Chat GPT wrapper on top of like a Google Doc, and that's great. It like made Google Docs better. It makes it easier to write. It makes it better to write. It helps you write, and it's a simple premise. It's a great product. They grew pretty quickly, and I don't think they're doing as well as they were, but good idea. The thing that our product does, and the bet that we've taken, is that the thing that's still missing from AI land is business context, right? We operate on top of your company's internal data, and we provide a safe route for that data to access a variety of models, right? That could be OpenAI, that could be Claude, that could be Google search, right? Giving the AI context is going to make it more trustworthy when you're trying to do operations at scale. So if you, let's take a quick example, right? If I downloaded 100 reviews for the camera that's I'm looking into right now, right? If I downloaded 100 reviews for that and I just chucked all those reviews into ChatGPT and I said, tell me something, it'll say, hey, a lot of people are saying how great it is that it has Wi-Fi capability. But then when I create a new tab and I ask another instance of ChatGPT the same thing, it's going to return something different. And that actually, because it doesn't know what I'm looking for. But once you start to layer in business context where it's like, hey, I am Sony, I am looking at improving this product. I think that, the main areas of focus for me are the Wi-Fi capability, but also the shutter speed and the aperture. How do people feel about taking nature photos versus city photos? I'm not a photographer, as you can tell. I don't know anything about golf, and I don't know anything about photography. That's the two things we've talked about. But once you start to give that context, because the AI is connected to other parts of your business, you can start to get more repetitive answers that are fundamentally easier. And when you move that to the action lens, right? When you're starting to give this AI access to take action for you, that's where that becomes super, super important, right? Because even if it fails 5% of that time, 5% of the time an AI giving a customer a refund is going to be catastrophic for your business. So giving it access to both your internal data sets and making it a controlled environment is what we do for businesses. And that makes AI a lot more usable at scale. Yes, ChatGPT and uploading it is great for one-time analyses and trying to understand things at a high level. But if you want to have it actually work at scale, you have to add context and controls. And that's what we do.
That makes sense. Hey, Bret, let's talk about what you're seeing in the industry, and particularly specific to analytics and insight generation and using AI as a way to either deliver those insights or at least make them more accessible.
I love that question. And I'm going to segue into something Ibby said. because I think this is a critical area. So Ibby explaining the information coming into whether it's a GPT model or something more robust and specific, like an AI agent that is built specifically for a layer. It depends on what data we're feeding it. So let me give you an example. So a nutritional supplement company that I've done a lot of work with. So this was a couple of years ago, and let me give you context. This particular company, their revenue model was primarily based on subscription. So they sold nutritional supplements, but primarily they wanted to get you into a subscription because you could get substantially larger discounts if you had a monthly membership subscription. Well, because it was a subscription-based model, obviously they were going to experience a ton of cancellations every single day, every single month. And so the question was coined to the CX team is there something we can do to stop churn, to stop this attrition, to stop customers, or to maybe offer them something? And what not everybody, but what a lot of companies do is they'll come up with an offering, or they'll change the offering, and they blanket it to everybody who goes to cancel. And that's fine, because those companies, they're trying to at least save those customers that are canceling. But one thing Ibby pointed out is critical: the information we're giving it. So what we ended up doing is, well, we have transactional data on all of these customers. We also, for many of them, because like any good CX program, we were measuring different touch points, whether it's with a product or an actual call center experience. We had survey data. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up combining that data, and we could quite accurately predict not necessarily the specific reason, but generally the factors of why they were canceling. What we ended up finding is that there were two predominant categories or factors. One was people just didn't like a subscription. So it had nothing to do with the product, had nothing to do with the price point. It was just, I just don't like being tied to a subscription. So giving them some sort of discount on the subscription would have been a meaningless offer. Well, another group it was the price point. It was just too high for me. I love the product. I'm fine with the subscription, but that subscription price point is too high for me. Well, those two groups, the offer needs to be vastly different.
Sure.
And Ibby hinted towards this. And that's one thing we did, is sort of journey orchestration, is when someone is signed into their account and they go to cancel, we knew exactly the type of offer we could give to that person. And we saw substantial gains, both in account save, but in lifetime value of customers, which ultimately impacts revenue of the organization. So that's sort of a real world example of what Ibby was explaining.
So I assume that you guys, cancellation flow changed. It's either stop having a subscription and the price goes up, or continue with the subscription, but for an even deeper discount.
For certain people, if
got it.
If the model predicted that subscription hesitancy was their issue, then it's actually okay to let them cancel their subscription. What we end up doing on the back end is we end up creating a journey model to where we still give them deeper discounts specific to that customer, and we don't let them die just because they're not on a subscription. We give them deeper discounts on specific products, on customized outreach to that customer, versus somebody else where price was the issue. We want to keep them on the subscription, so let's offer them a discounted subscription price.
That's exciting. Guys, one more big question I want to lob out there to both of you guys. A big bee just flew by my head. I want to talk about this topic of synthetic data and synthetic surveying. In other words, instead of relying on real feedback from real customers, how much of that could be run through a simulation or a prediction model? And how much, like you were talking before, Bret, about things like churn models and understanding who has a propensity to kill their subscription to the product company. Is there a different way to do that? And what's the thinking on that? Have you guys seen other examples of reliable analytics that could be predictive and relatively confident in their predictions? And what have you seen possible? Just talk about kind of this idea of kind of synthetic data and synthetic results.
Ibby, do you mind if I tackle this first and then let you clean up?
No, I wanted to hear your thoughts first. You're definitely on the research side. The research side of this is more important all day, every day.
But yeah, this is Ibby's realm. He knows this stuff, so I wanted him to hit the home run after I'm done. I think it's, Mark, to answer the question, it's very contextual on the data available and what we already know about the customer.
Sure.
If we just make a blanket statement, which is what you see a lot of companies advertising, we need to be very careful that synthetic data is just going to accurately predict what a customer wants, even though we know very little to none about that customer or that type of customer. So here's an example. With a particular company, we just got done doing a very large scale nationwide segmentation study, to where we were trying to understand not just the demographics, but the psychographics, the behaviors, their intentions, their goals of why they like or don't like a particular product or service. And so that type of study requires a massive amount of data to feed into those models so that we're understanding the different segments that exist, why this particular segment is drastically different than this particular segment. And in my experience, I see that's where it's not that AI breaks down. It's those who are trying to use AI to predict or use synthetic data, their misunderstanding of what's needed to create a reliable and accurate outcome.
Sure.
In that case, when you have a great segmentation study, when you have a lot of transactional data, in those instances, if you can answer yes and yes to both of those questions, synthetic data is massive and it is powerful and absolutely should be used. The caveat, though, Mark, is a lot of companies are not in that situation. And so we need to say yes, but, then continue the conversation.
I could see that.
Yeah, I think that Bret hit the nail on the head. I think that the things that it's good for is innovation. It's a great tool to be used for fixing something internal compared to like expanding into a new market, right? So if going back to like a nutrition company, if that nutrition company is trying to, I don't know, launch like a tote bag, I don't know, I'm making these things up. It's going to be a lot harder to find how your customers feel about a tote bag than if you're going to tweak an existing formula. Right? Let's say that you were going to launch like a vegan option. Basically, like the thing that you need to do, one thing that you could do is you could go out and survey all of your existing customers and say, hey, we'll pay you $5 if you tell us your feelings about a vegan option. Or you can look at your existing NPS data, customer support data, and reviews to say, hey, how many of our customers have actually brought up the fact that they need a vegan option? Right. And then what that does is it, one, gives you a population to go back and survey again. Okay, hey, you expressed interest about giving giving you a vegan option. What would you like that vegan option to contain, right? Like, did you like the flavor of the non-vegan option? Do you want it to look exactly the same? Are you using it for a different use case than you were before, right? Like, you can go and actually be a lot more targeted. And if you're going to pay people, rather than going to the entire market and spending a ton of money on it, you can go to a very narrow portion of the market that has asked for it and get the finer details from them for a much lower cost, right? And so pairing it with sort of conventional methods is definitely kind of what you need to do. And it's, as Bret said, better used when you have context about what you're trying to do.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Does to me.
And Mark, before we change, I just wanted to double hit that, as Ibby said. And that's the power of AI and even agentic AI is it allows researchers who have that skill set is you can basically clone them. And so instead of just being one person, you can be 5 people doing multiple different projects simultaneously because you have AI doing the type of outreach that Ibby just explained and articulated. It is so powerful, and companies that are able to utilize something like what Cotera is providing, it just enables them to scale beyond what was possible in the past.
I get it. Believe me, I get it. I just have 2 more things I want to cover with you guys before we wrap up, because I know we're running a little long on the time, so I want to be mindful of your time. The first one is a big question that I hear argued pro and con both ways: buy versus build. You know, you have companies that see buying technology as a way to get into the game and make it easy and relatively cheap and relatively quick. And you have guys that say, you know what, I could just give me X amount of time and I could build this thing and I could do just as well, if not better, and it'll be quote unquote free. Talk to me about the buy versus build. What are you guys seeing as trends out there? Do you see buy being the most viable option? Do you see build being the most viable option? What's your observations?
I think it's contextual, Mark. I think it's very contextual. It depends on the situation at the company. Lots of things that go into answering that question. But let me just briefly give you an example. So in a former life, we were not anti-buying. But a particular thing that we wanted to do was unproven. And so the context was, well, it's unproven. We don't know if this is going to work. So investing might be unwise. So let's see first if we can build an option. If that's proven viable, then that frees up some funds for us to go buy something. That's one example. I'll just be brief in the example is this particular company had about a mid-size call center. And like any CX program, of course, a percentage of those customers we were surveying about the interaction, about the agent. Did we complete the objective of why they called in? And so we were gathering this survey data. Well, what most survey platforms do is they let you send an automated, okay, thanks for your survey response. Nobody cares about that. Nobody reads them. It's actually in some cases annoying. And so we were thinking, okay, well, we're surveying. Is there something that we can do to increase the experience? It's already post their interaction with our call center. So can we use the survey process to actually enhance the customer experience? Ibby hit on this earlier, but one of the things that we did is we ran their survey response through a GPT model. We had to train it through thousands and thousands of survey responses. We had to be very specific on what it can and can't say. We had to be very specific in training it, the tone, how long or short we wanted the message. But what we ended up doing is when someone would complete a response, it would automatically kick out after about 5 or 10 minutes, automatically kick out a response as if it was somebody like me saying, hey, Ibby, I just saw you had an interaction. Looks like you left some survey comments. Hey, I'm super pumped that you thought Mark was a cool guy and he was able to help you. Something totally human sounding, very, very short. In full transparency, it wasn't a human. But what that ended up doing is it created that additional experience, enhancing that human-like interaction, and people loved it. And it actually did have incremental gains in LTV. But that's one of the examples of it depends. We proved the concept, and then it opened up funds for us to get a larger, more robust solution.
This is so good. There's explicit ones that you just mentioned. The thing that reminds me of, and I don't know how, we don't work with them, but Chewy, they sell all sorts of dog products, but they have a similar, I think it's powered by a bot. I don't think they have a human reading all of these, but basically if somebody cancels their subscription because their dog passed away, they will actually, there's like an internal trigger that causes someone on the customer experience team to like look at their account and kind of look at what they were like as a customer and provide them like a gift of some kind, right? Like as like they'll send flowers, or they've kind of been known to do really, really above and beyond things from a surprise and delight perspective. And it just like, one, it's a nice thing to do, but also from like a strategic standpoint, it just gives your brand so much. Like when I think, I don't even have a dog, and I think of Chewy as a product that like, it's a company that loves dogs, right? Like if I'm going to buy something for a friend who just got a new puppy, I'm going to go to Chewy. Like they're clearly like invested in this space, care about people's pets. They're going to be high quality. It just provides this sort of like brand overlay that's just so cool. And you can just do things like that at a such higher scale because the agentic layer has context, right? You asked about build versus buy, so I'll answer that question too, which is that I think it's kind of the common take, which is just in engineering in general, you should put your engineering team, because engineers are expensive, and there's not just the first time build cost, there's also the maintenance cost. if it's going to add value to your customer base, then you should most likely build it internally. If it's a tool that your team is going to use and it does not provide a strategic ROI for you to build it in-house, then you should just buy it, right? Like a great example of this is I was in a conversation with a friend the other day, and he brought up, oh, like we're thinking about building this AI product to do to help our customer success agents write better, right? And I'm like, you guys are a small company. Why are you wasting your engineering time on this? Because what's going to happen is you're going to spend, let's say it takes you 6 months. One of your engineers in San Francisco probably costs $200,000. That's $100,000 in investment that you've given right then and there. And then you're going to have to probably use 25% of a person's time to just maintain that product and update all the software packages and do all that kind of stuff. And we are not at the stage where AI can handle 100% of that. Your internal team is going to ask for additional tooling. An off-the-shelf product is going to cost you like $20 per user per month. Just buy that. Like, why are you building it? You should be building AI products for your customers rather than things that don't provide a strategic ROI to you.
I see that loud and clear. Hey guys, it looks like we're right up against the hour here. So I thought I would just wrap up by making sure that our friends who are out there listening to this conversation know how to find you guys. Bret, can we start with you and just share what's the best way if somebody wants to follow up with you and chat with you offline after this? How do they find you?
Did you say Bret? Sorry, I missed that, Mark.
Yes.
Me?
Yes, you.
LinkedIn is great. I'm all over LinkedIn. It's very pretentious. Dr. Bret Miller. Just on LinkedIn, you'll find me. It's Bret with one T, B-R-E-T, but that's the easiest way. Just LinkedIn.
Thanks, Bret. And Ibby, how about you?
LinkedIn is also great. I'm just Ibby Syed on LinkedIn. You can also go to my website, ibby.us. All of my emails and things are listed on there too. Very
cool. Guys, thanks for hanging out with me for this conversation. It's always good to hang out with two of the smartest guys in the business, and I'm grateful for your time here. We're going to wrap up the show in just a moment, but I'm going to want to take a quick second here to reiterate that you guys are doing some amazing work, both of you. Bret, from your standpoint, on the brand side, on the client side, and Ibby on the supplier vendor side of the equation. I can't think of two smarter, better guys in this business to spend the hour with. So thank you both for the hangout here.
Thanks so much for having us.
This was awesome.
So much fun.
Thanks, guys. So, for those of you listening, we're going to wrap up the show in just a minute, but I'm going to first move just to a couple of quick housekeeping things. So guys, from a housekeeping perspective, one of the things I want to offer, since we've been here talking not just about AI today, but about agentic AI, I came across a book recently. I'm going to hold up the book here. It's written by a gentleman named David Patel. It's called AI Agents Explained for Business Leaders. It's an updated book. It's a brand new edition of this book that just came out. I picked up a copy of this one recently on Amazon. I have no connection to David Patel other than having bought his book, but I could tell you it's awesome. And with that said, I enjoy giving books like this away to my friends. And so if you're interested in a copy of this book, ping me and say, hey, send me a copy of the book and I'll buy it for you from Amazon and have it sent to you. And I mentioned at the onset of the show, the big Customer Experience XM conference coming up on May 14th that Tom DeWitt's organizing. Remember, I got 5 tickets for that. And if you want one of those 5, ping me and just let me know. It'll be in your inbox as Tom and my gift. And with that, we're going to wrap up the show and just simply say thank you again, guys. You being here for the hour with me means the world to me, and I'm grateful for the hour that you've given. And I'm looking forward to doing more of these shows in the next coming weeks with you. So until I see you again, stay well, my friends. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye now.